Focus mode. Focus mode is good. Focus mode is too good. Ski rats. Ski rats are good. Ski rats are stupidly good. Ski rats are stupid.
Today, let's talk about a fun, lighthearted, and non-divisive topic which stems from what I consider to be modern Monster Hunter's hardest design problem: multiple target audiences. Now, this isn't like a Monster Hunter specific problem. A lot of franchises run into this, especially after enough games are made, or having a competitive versus casual scene, or after having a large influx of new players. Monster Hunter has 20 years of games, and with each new game they make, they pick up a new sub-audience of players, each with different dreams and desires for what the ideal Monster Hunter should be. We've got old-gen players, even older-gen players, aquatic players.
What?
And then, on the other side of this ocean of unspecified distance, we've got world players, Rise players, and even Monster Hunter Now players who enjoy such pleasures as Tsitsiaku full-screen blindness and microtransactions. And now, finally, we have wild players, full of hopes, dreams, and kunafa cheese. Yeah, actually no, kunafa cheese is a little more round, I guess. And this begs the question: how do you make a game that makes all of these different players happy? And that is a question that I'm not gonna have an easy answer for, because if I did, I would be working at Capcom getting paid $2 million per second. Now, this is a very deep topic, deeper than even the hole on Jubu's face. And while I invite all to come have a fun, lighthearted, and non-divisive heated argument about which audience is objectively correct in my comment section, today I want to talk about one specific facet of this problem, which is immersion versus quality of life. I have just been informed that until I hit a certain undisclosed number of subscribers, my boss will continuously run over Downey Craig's and Suja. So please, save our feathery friends from this truly terrible fate, and consider subscribing. There's many different spectrums that need to be taken into account when making a game for multiple audiences. We're not talking about spectrums like the color spectrum or the autistic spectrum, though with Monster Hunter, I'm sure you need to take those into account as well. Instead, we're talking about spectrums of values that different audiences will want in a game. Things like difficulty, which of course many players feel differently about. Handler likability is another highly valued spectrum. Something like the difficulty spectrum can be somewhat solved by creating a wide spread of difficulty across different content. For example, a less difficult main story and more difficult endgame content and optional event quests. However, the immersion versus quality of life spectrum oftentimes affects game-wide mechanics, which in my opinion makes it harder to design around. Now, one could say that immersion is a form of difficulty, and in a way, they would be right. Oftentimes, with each piece of immersion you add, you create just a little bit more work for the player, an artistic representation of how tiring real life is. For every flashbug rear end you show being forcefully enemaed into a test tube is an extra 2 seconds players must wait per animation while trying to mass collect items. For every quest counter that goes sightseeing is an extra 30-second walk just to change game lobbies. However, the reason people like the difficulty of immersion isn't because of the high-level sweaty gameplay that it adds, but instead because of how much more alive it makes the game feel. For example, having to paintball a monster in order to keep track of it, or having to know where a monster typically hangs out to find it initially, all add to the feeling of hunting a monster. So what are some benefits to picking one side over the other? Choosing more immersive elements can help the game feel more grounded. Keeping certain mechanics the way they are can also help retain the original fanbase, who have come to like certain inconveniences about a game, especially in a long-lasting series like Monster Hunter. And of course, having certain things be harder can make their eventual rewards have more value to the player. Having pickaxes be consumable items that randomly break, or having plate and gem drop rates be very low, can make the eventual armor piece or weapon that they create feel that much more valuable.
I squirm, I struggle, ergo I am.
As a wise Woodwood once said. On the other hand, making certain elements easier can have upsides as well. Sometimes mechanics are just a massive pain for most players, even those who started with that game. For example, having too much climbing can be fixed by less climbing areas and also wedge beetles. And of course, toning down some inconvenient mechanics can help attract new or casual players to the franchise. So where is the line of balance? That magical point on the line where the Monster Hunter developers should be striving to hit, where the game is just immersive enough to embed you right into the world of the hunting of the monsters, but also simple enough that it's not irritating. The unfortunate answer is that it changes depending on who you ask. And there lies the issue. Somewhere between a Monster Hunter game where you have to dig through monster dung and play a digested food identification minigame to gain research tracking points every quest, and a game where you have teleportation powers and fast travel straight to a monster instantly, is every player's perfect Monster Hunter game, and each player will have a different answer for what that is. There's a few solutions for catering immersion versus quality of life to multiple different audiences, and I think this is where the big boy design decisions come in. One option is just picking a point on the spectrum and saying that's how things are all the time for everyone. For example, the dunes in the Windward Plains being a huge pain to fight on, as Alma will never let you forget, is definitely an accurate representation of real sand. And it's just something you're gonna have to deal with every time you fight there. Does it make sense in respect to the world? Absolutely. Does it add a level of logic and realism that's beneficial to the game? Probably. On the other hand, every time you get blasted by a Raidao wing drag over a dune is gonna make you want to slaughter a tribe of Tusken Raiders. An opposite example would be ski rats. Ski rats, of course, getting you to the monster abuse portion of the game a little faster, at the cost of making a few maps feel a little less grounded, both in terms of travel distance and inability to travel via foot. Another option is you can design some parts of your game to be more immersive and other parts to be a little less immersive. For example, combat in Wilds is definitely a little less on the immersive side, though it is understandably a bit hard to determine while the monster is squirming helplessly on the ground for a majority of the fight. Focus mode, of course, makes a few heavy-set attacks feel a bit less grounded in exchange for ease of use. And of course, there's other small, less immersive mechanics like the song that makes the monster explode out of the sky, or letting players do this because it looks and feels pretty cool. Whereas outside of combat, you encounter more grounded elements, things like endemic life behavior, traversing NPCs, village drama, or not being able to sleep in Suja because I guess they don't have beds there. Hey, you think I could maybe borrow a pillow or something? No! And the final option, at least as far as we're covering them today, is to make things start more immersive and then have them become more quality of life as the game progresses. What initially starts off as manual item gathering slowly descends into a multi-level stock market scheme. There's a storm going on, we gotta liquidate, Nata. What? We gotta liquidate. We gotta liquidate our whole stock of nullberries. Or, for example, tracking monsters in World, which starts off more in the old gen system of not knowing where monsters are, but slowly levels up to the modern version of fortune-telling scoutflies. Now, I think the base release of Wilds was definitely created with a larger casual audience group in mind. I'm sure the developers identified that one of the standout parts of the series is, of course, the weapon complexity in combat and how it allows players to sort of express themselves into the monster, and design this game around getting you to that part faster. Puzzlingly enough, the other fun part of the game loop is the build creation and planning that fuels a desire for combat in the first place, and much of that UI has some questionable decisions. So, do you guys think Monster Hunter has picked good quality of life changes for Wilds? Or perhaps do you think it's a disaster, being both too easy and too hard in all the wrong ways? Leave opinions and argue to your heart's content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.